Welcome back, fellow criminologists. Once again, you'll be stuck with me, Niko Honda, on today's episode of Northwood Files. In this episode, we'll be bringing the past 3 episodes together for one big case study finale. Although, be prepared, today's episode is a lot darker than the last few. All the interesting stories and boring facts you've learned about all come together as we apply our knowledge to the tragic case of Brenda Spencer. To give a brief review, throughout this podcast, we've discussed how adolescent brains are observing society to develop their moral code, how that code is affected in a court setting, and how the difference in brain structure between adolescents and adults affects teenage decision-making. All these can be applied and exemplified in one horrid case taking place on Monday, January 29th, 1979, at San Diego's Cleveland Elementary School. The day started just like any other, with kids sad that the weekend is over and adults going back to work. But on this day, 16-year-old Brenda Spencer would open fire on the elementary school across from her house. She'd end up hitting 3 adults and 8 children. This would become San Diego and America's first major school shooting and an absolute disaster. Of the 11 marks hit, Principal Bern Ragg and janitor Michael Sushar would not survive. Both died valiantly, losing their lives, hurting the stampede of panicked kids to safety inside the building. As the gunshots from the .22 semi-automatic rifle Brenda's father gifted her for her birthday were being heard across town, reporters would leap into action, desperate to be the first to find any lead on the event. One reporter, Gus Stevens of the San Diego Evening Tribune, was calling all the houses neighboring the school trying to find a lead on the story. He would call the Spencer home, and Brenda would pick up the phone and confess to be the culprit. Brenda would then tell the reporter, after he asked why she did it, quote, "I just don't like Mondays. I did this because it was a way to cheer up the day," end quote. 16-year-old Brenda would then be tried as an adult and plead guilty for 25 years to life in prison for 2 counts of murder and 9 counts of assault with a chance of parole. During the court case, she would claim that she hallucinated soldiers outside the door and had consumed pills, marijuana, and alcohol that morning. No evidence of any of these substances were found in her toxicology report, causing them to have little effect during the trial. Years later, in her parole hearing, Spencer's story would once again change. She now claims she had been, quote, sexually abused by her father, end quote, and that her father, quote, had done everything a person could do to another person, the beatings, the touching, the emotional abuse, end quote. Although, once again, none of these allegations were proven. Many speculated that her claims must be true due to the plenty of oddities with her father and seeing no way such a young innocent girl could conceive such a horrid event for no apparent reason other than just the fun of it. While others believe she fabricated the story in order to get more lenient court sentences. Although we may never know the true reason why 16-year-old Brenda Spencer decided to shoot up her local elementary school, we can analyze from her life what could explain her poor mental state. As we've discussed in an earlier episode, the prefrontal cortex of adolescent's brain can inhibit rational decision-making, partly explaining the irrationality of her decision and the constantly changing court testimony. This, along with the fact that her psychological analysis did have an injury in her temporal lobe, demonstrates possible mental malfunctions of her brain. Brenda was also seen to have poor home life, possibly hurting the development of a proper moral code. Her parents divorced when she was at a young age due to her mother accusing her father of infidelity. Her father would gain custody of the children, possibly abusing her and at least giving her unrestricted access to a rifle at such a young age. Her mother would rarely interact with her children, abandoning them for her new life, all of which could greatly affect the creation of Brenda's moral code. This and many more could help explain Brenda's constantly changing story in court. In conclusion, I do not think it was fair for Brenda Spencer to be tried as an adult. In order to find the meaning of truth, not truth, but truth, in court cases, the testimony of children and teens should be greatly scrutinized when being evaluated. I hope you've learned something throughout this 4-episode series, and now at least reevaluate the use of adolescent testimony in court. Thank you for listening.